The security camera notification pinged at 11:47 p.m., and I knew exactly what I'd find on the footage. My wife Brielle, 31 years old and perpetually hungry for attention, was recording another one of her fitness motivation videos in our kitchen, except this time she wasn't alone. I'm Miles Heron, 34, and I work in data compliance for a tech company. That means I notice patterns, inconsistencies, and lies for a living. It's a skill that's served me well lately. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Through the smart home app on my phone, I watched Brielle pose seductively against our granite countertop, whispering into her camera about real motivation while texting someone named Ryder. Her yoga pants left nothing to imagination, and her crop top was strategically positioned. This wasn't fitness content. This was foreplay. "Daddy, why is Mommy always on her phone?" I looked down to find our 8-year-old daughter, Ava, standing in the hallway, rubbing her eyes. She'd inherited Brielle's blonde hair, but thankfully my common sense. "Just work stuff, sweetheart. Let's get you back to bed." As I tucked Ava in, she mumbled sleepily, "Mommy says you're boring now, but I think you're the best daddy ever." Kids have a way of cutting right through the bullshit, don't they? I'd purchased our lakeside home in Crimson Lake 3 years ago, solely in my name, with my credit, using my savings. Brielle had contributed exactly $0, but somehow considered herself the queen of our castle. She'd transformed our living room into a content creation studio, complete with ring lights and camera equipment that cost more than most people's cars. Brielle worked as a social media consultant, which meant she got paid to tell other people how to be fake online. She was exceptionally good at it. Our neighborhood was the kind of place where everyone drove luxury SUVs and pretended their marriages were perfect. The houses were modern, but already showing where, like everything else in this town, the facade was more important than the foundation. When I finally went to bed, Brielle was still downstairs, working. At 2 a.m. she slipped into our room, reeking of expensive perfume and lies. "How was your night?" I asked quietly. "Exhausting. This new client is so demanding." She didn't even look at me as she spoke. I'd stopped believing her months ago, but I'd also stopped caring enough to fight about it. That was my first mistake, or maybe my first smart move. I'm still deciding. The next morning, Brielle was already performing for her phone when I came downstairs. She'd positioned herself by our floor-to-ceiling windows, natural light hitting her perfectly as she filmed her morning routine. "Good morning, beautiful souls. Today we're talking about recognizing your worth and not settling for less than you deserve." The irony wasn't lost on me. "Morning," I said, grabbing coffee. She didn't acknowledge me, but her followers got a full performance about self-love and empowerment. If they only knew she'd been texting another man until 2 a.m. My phone buzzed with a text from my old boxing coach, Deshaun Walker, who ran a dive bar called The Corner Pocket, about 20 minutes away. "Haven't seen you in weeks. Everything good?" Coach D had trained me through college and kept me grounded ever since. His bar had a boxing ring in the back where locals could work out their frustrations legally. I'd been avoiding it lately because I wasn't sure I could control my frustrations anymore. "Just busy with work," I texted back. "Bullshit. Come by tonight. First beer's on me." At work, my boss Elliot cornered me by the coffee machine. He was the kind of guy who lived for office gossip and had opinions about everyone's personal life. "Saw Brielle's latest post. That woman of yours sure knows how to stay in shape. You're a lucky man, Miles." "Yeah, lucky," I muttered. "She's got quite the following, too. Must be nice having a wife who's basically a celebrity." If by celebrity he meant someone who sold her dignity for likes and follows, then sure. That evening, I drove to the Corner Pocket. The bar was exactly what you'd expect. Dim lighting, worn leather, and the smell of honest sweat instead of designer perfume. Coach D was behind the bar, his gray beard neatly trimmed and his knowing eyes taking me in immediately. "You look like hell, son." "Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear." He poured me a beer and leaned against the bar. "Want to talk about it, or you want to hit something?" "Can I do both?" 20 minutes later, I was in the ring, working the heavy bag while Coach D called out combinations. Each punch felt like releasing pressure from a valve I'd kept closed too long. "Your form's sloppy. You're angry, not focused." "Maybe I have reason to be angry." "Anger's fine. Stupid anger gets you hurt. Smart anger gets you results." I stopped punching and looked at him. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Means if someone's playing games with you, maybe it's time you learn the rules." Brielle's social circle consisted of two main players, Tasha Morrison and Celine Rodriguez. Tasha was 29, worked in marketing, and had the kind of calculating intelligence that most people mistook for sweetness. Celine was 32, divorced, and treated flirtation like a competitive sport. They came over every Friday for what Brielle called creative collaboration sessions, but what actually amounted to gossip, wine, and content planning. I usually made myself scarce, but lately I'd started paying attention. "Miles, there you are, handsome." Celine's greeting was accompanied by a hug that lasted longer than necessary. "We were just talking about you." "All good things, I hope." Tasha smiled, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "Always. Brielle's so lucky to have a man who's actually reliable. Most guys our age are still acting like teenagers." Brielle looked up from her phone with obvious irritation. "Can we focus, please? I need to get this content calendar finished." "Of course, honey," Tasha said, but she didn't move away from where she'd positioned herself next to me on the couch. Over the next hour, I noticed something interesting. While Brielle was absorbed in her phone, scheduling posts and responding to comments, Tasha and Celine kept drawing me into conversation. They asked about my work, my opinions, my plans for the weekend. They laughed at my jokes and actually listened when I spoke. It was such a foreign experience that it took me a while to recognize what was happening. They were flirting with me, not subtly, either. "Miles, you should come to that new wine bar downtown with us next week," Celine suggested. "Brielle's always too busy with work stuff." "I'm sitting right here," Brielle snapped without looking up. "Sorry, babe. We just think Miles deserves to have some fun too." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. I excused myself to get more wine, and Tasha followed me to the kitchen. "She takes you for granted, you know," she said quietly. "Excuse me?" "Brielle. She's always complaining about how boring domestic life is, how she needs excitement. Meanwhile, she's got a good man right in front of her and doesn't even see it." I studied Tasha's face, looking for the angle. There's always an angle. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because someone should. And because—" She stepped closer. "Because if I had what she has, I wouldn't be looking elsewhere for attention." Before I could respond, Celine appeared in the doorway. "Everything okay in here? You two are taking forever." "Just having a real conversation for once," Tasha replied. When we returned to the living room, Brielle was filming herself drinking wine and talking about toxic people who don't support your dreams. The camera was angled so her friends and I were visible in the background, like props in her performance. After they left, Brielle was unusually quiet. "Your friends seem nice," I said, testing the waters. "They're not my friends. They're networking contacts." "That's a cold way to put it. It's an honest way to put it. Everything is networking, Miles. Some of us understand that. And some of us understand loyalty." She finally looked at me directly. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Forget it." But I wasn't going to forget it. For the first time in months, I'd felt like someone actually wanted my company. Two someones, actually. And they happened to be the people closest to my wife. I'm good at my job because I understand that information is power, but only if you know how to use it. So I started paying attention, really paying attention, to everything happening in my house. Brielle had gotten sloppy with her digital security. She left her laptop open, her phone unlocked, her cloud storage accessible. Maybe she thought I was too boring to be a threat, or maybe she'd just stopped caring about hiding her activities. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Ryder Knox wasn't her only extracurricular activity. There was Marcus, a photographer who'd been collaborating with her on some very personal projects. There was David, a fitness influencer who'd been sending her messages that had nothing to do with exercise. And there were others, a trail of conversations, photos, and plans that painted a picture of a woman who'd checked out of our marriage completely. But the most interesting discovery was a group chat between Brielle, Tasha, and Celine called Queen Bees. Reading through their messages was like getting a behind-the-scenes look at a reality show I didn't know I was starring in. Brielle: Miles is being weird lately, more attentive or something. Tasha: Maybe he's finally noticing what he's about to lose. Celine: Or maybe he's planning something. Quiet guys are dangerous when they snap. Brielle: Please, he doesn't have the balls to do anything dramatic. Tasha: Don't underestimate him, B. I've been watching him, and there's more going on upstairs than you give him credit for. Celine: Tasha's right. Plus, he's actually attractive when you pay attention. Those shoulders don't come from sitting at a desk all day. Brielle: Gross. You two can have him when I'm done. Tasha: Don't tempt me. I screenshot everything and stored it in an encrypted folder on my work laptop. Then I did something that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. I started planning my exit strategy. The house was mine. The cars were in my name. Most of our shared assets were actually my assets that I'd been generous enough to share. Brielle's name wasn't on the deed, the mortgage, or any of the major credit cards. She'd insisted on keeping her finances independent when we got married, which at the time felt like a modern, progressive choice. Now, it felt like a gift from the universe. I made an appointment with a family law attorney named Patricia Wells. Her office was in the next town over, far enough from Crimson Lake that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. This is a fairly straightforward case, she told me after reviewing my documentation. You have grounds for divorce based on adultery, you own the majority of the assets, and you have evidence of her misconduct. The only complication is your daughter. I want shared custody, but I want primary residence with me. Brielle's lifestyle isn't stable enough for a child. We can work with that. How do you want to handle this? Mediation or litigation? I want to try mediation first. I'm not looking to destroy her. I just want out. That was true at the time. I hadn't yet reached the point where destruction seemed like the only satisfactory option. I stopped chasing Brielle's attention. It was that simple and that difficult. No more asking about her day. No more trying to plan date nights. No more attempting to compete with her phone for her focus. Instead, I became politely indifferent, present but not pursuing. The change in our dynamic was immediate and obvious. Are you okay? She asked one evening when I didn't comment on her new outfit. I'm fine. Why? You've been, distant lately. I've been the same. Maybe you're just noticing now. She didn't like that answer, but she didn't push it either. Instead, she doubled down on her external validation seeking. Her posts became more frequent and more provocative. Her work meetings ran later. Her need for attention became more desperate and obvious. Meanwhile, Tasha and Celine's Friday visits became more interesting. Miles, you've been working out, Celine observed, running her hand along my arm as she passed behind my chair. It shows. Thanks. Just trying to stay healthy. It's working. Isn't it working, Tasha? Tasha looked up from her phone. Brielle was in the bathroom, probably filming herself, and smiled. Definitely working. Brielle's crazy if she doesn't notice. Notice what? Brielle asked, returning to the room. How good Miles looks lately, Celine said innocently. We were just saying you're lucky to have a husband who takes care of himself. Brielle glanced at me with mild irritation. Sure, Lucky me. But I could see something else in her expression. Uncertainty. For the first time in months, she was wondering what I was thinking instead of assuming she knew. The next Friday, I decided to test a theory. When the women arrived for their usual session, I didn't disappear to my office. Instead, I stayed in the kitchen, making dinner and occasionally joining their conversation when they included me, which they did. Frequently. "Miles, settle an argument for us," Tasha said during a discussion about weekend plans. "If you were planning a romantic getaway, would you rather go somewhere adventurous or somewhere relaxing?" "Depends on the company," I replied. "With the right person, anywhere can be adventurous." Celine laughed. "See? I told you he'd have a good answer." Brielle looked annoyed. "Can we get back to work, please?" "This is work," Tasha said. "We're discussing content ideas for the relationship series, remember?" For the next 2 hours, while Brielle focused on editing photos and responding to comments, her friends focused on me. They asked my opinion on everything from restaurant recommendations to career advice. They laughed at my jokes and shared stories from their own lives. It felt like being seen by people who actually wanted to see me. When they were getting ready to leave, Tasha lingered by the door. "We should all hang out more often," she said. "Not just for work stuff. Maybe we could do a double date sometime." "I don't think Brielle's interested in double dates," I replied. "Maybe not with Brielle," Celine added, appearing beside Tasha. "But that doesn't mean you have to stay home every weekend." They left me with that thought and phone numbers I hadn't asked for but didn't refuse. That night, Brielle was unusually attentive. "How was your evening?" she asked as we got ready for bed. "Fine. Your friends are nice." "They're not my friends, remember? They're networking contacts." "Right. Well, your networking contacts seem to think I'm good company." She paused in the middle of removing her makeup. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just an observation." But it wasn't nothing, and we both knew it. 3 weeks later, everything changed. Brielle had told me she'd be out until late, working on a collaborative project with one of her photographer contacts. I knew exactly what kind of collaboration she meant, and I'd stopped caring enough to be hurt by it. What I hadn't expected was for Tasha to text me at 7 p.m. "Celine and I are putting together a charity drive for the women's shelter. Could we bounce some ideas off you? We're at that coffee place downtown if you want to join us." I should have said no. I should have stayed home and maintained the careful distance I'd been building. Instead, I found myself texting back, "I'll meet you there in 20 minutes. The coffee shop was busy enough to provide cover but quiet enough for conversation. Tasha and Celine had claimed a corner table, and they waved me over with genuine smiles. "You came," Celine said, standing to hug me. Again, the contact lasted longer than necessary. "So tell me about this charity drive," I said, settling into my chair. For the next hour, we actually did discuss charity work. The women's shelter needed donations, volunteers, and promotional support. It was a legitimate cause, and their passion for it was real. But there was something else happening beneath the surface of our conversation. A tension that had nothing to do with charitable giving and everything to do with the way Tasha kept touching my arm when she made a point, or how Celine laughed at everything I said, or how both of them kept mentioning how nice it was to spend time with someone who actually listened. "Brielle doesn't know how good she has it," Tasha said as we were getting ready to leave. "She's lucky we're loyal friends," Celine added. "Other women would have made a move by now." "Other women like who?" I asked. They exchanged a look that said everything. "Hypothetical women," Tasha said with a smile that wasn't hypothetical at all. When I got home, Brielle's car wasn't in the driveway. I texted her to ask when she'd be back, but she didn't respond, so I did something that probably wasn't smart. I invited Tasha and Celine over to continue our charity planning discussion. They arrived within 20 minutes, bringing wine, and what they claimed were donation forms that needed reviewing. We spread everything out on the kitchen table and got to work. except the work kept getting interrupted by conversation that had nothing to do with Charity. Stories about their lives, their relationships, their dreams. Questions about my marriage, my happiness, my plans for the future. "You deserve better than this," Tasha said during a lull in conversation. She was sitting close enough that I could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive that didn't scream for attention like Brielle's signature scent. Better than what? Than being taken for granted, than being treated like you're invisible in your own home. Celine nodded. "We see how she treats you, Miles. We see how she talks about you when you're not around." "How does she talk about me?" "Like you're a convenience. Like you're just there to pay the bills and watch Ava while she lives her best life." I should have defended my wife. 6 months ago, I would have. Instead, I found myself asking, "Is that really how you see our marriage?" "We see a good man who's being wasted," Tasha said softly. That's when we heard the car door slam in the driveway. "Shit," Celine whispered. "She's home early." "So what?" I said, not moving from my chair. "We're planning a charity event. There's nothing wrong with that." But there was something wrong with it, and we all knew it. The wine glasses, the intimate seating arrangement, the way Tasha's hand was resting on my arm, none of it looked like charity planning. The front door opened, and we heard Brielle's heels clicking across the hardwood floor. She appeared in the kitchen doorway and stopped, taking in the scene. Tasha and Celine flanked me at the table, papers spread between us, wine glasses half empty, the lighting soft and warm. We looked like what we were, 3 people who were enjoying each other's company far too much. "What's going on here?" Brielle asked. Her voice was carefully controlled, but I could see the shock in her eyes. This wasn't the script she'd written for her life. In her version, I was the boring husband who stayed home while she lived dramatically. I wasn't supposed to be the center of attention for 2 attractive women. "Charity planning," I said calmly. "Tasha and Celine are organizing a drive for the women's shelter." "At our kitchen table, with wine?" "It's called making work enjoyable," Celine said with a smile that had too many teeth. "You should try it sometime." Brielle looked between her friends and her husband, and for the first time in our marriage, she was speechless. She'd built her entire identity around being the desirable one, the one people wanted to be around. Seeing her friends choose my company over hers had short-circuited her understanding of how the world worked. "I thought you were working late," I said. The project finished early." "That's too bad. We were just talking about how much we miss spending time with you." It was a lie, and everyone in the room knew it. Tasha stood up, gathering her papers. "We should probably go. It's getting late." "Yeah," Celine agreed. "But Miles, we should definitely continue this conversation soon. Maybe somewhere quieter." They hugged me goodbye. Long, meaningful hugs that left no doubt about their intentions. Then they nodded politely to Brielle and let themselves out. Brielle and I stood in our kitchen surrounded by the evidence of an evening that had shifted the balance of power in our marriage. "How long has this been going on?" she asked finally. "How long has what been going on?" "This, whatever this is." "You mean me having friends? About 3 weeks?" "Those are my friends." "Are they?" "Because they seem to prefer my company." She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Maybe she was. The next morning, Brielle was performing damage control. She made me breakfast, something she hadn't done in months. She wore the dress I'd once told her was my favorite. She put her phone away and tried to engage me in conversation about our weekend plans. It was too little, too late, and we both knew it. "I was thinking we could take Ava to that new indoor climbing place," she suggested. "Sounds good. Or we could do something just the 2 of us. Maybe that wine tasting you mentioned a while back." "I don't remember mentioning a wine tasting." "Well, something romantic. It's been a while since we had quality time together." I looked at her over my coffee cup. "Whose fault is that?" "I know I've been busy with work." "Brielle, stop. We both know this isn't about work." She froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. What do you mean? I mean I know about Ryder, and Marcus, and David, and whoever else you've been collaborating with. The color drained from her face. Miles, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You're very creative. I stood up and put my plate in the dishwasher, moving calmly while she sat in stunned silence. What do you want? She asked finally. I want you to stop pretending. I want you to stop treating me like I'm stupid. And I want you to understand that things have changed. Changed how? You'll figure it out. I left for work without kissing her goodbye, something that would have seemed unthinkable a month ago and felt completely natural now. At the office, I found myself smiling for the first time in weeks. The weight of pretending everything was fine had been heavier than I'd realized. My phone buzzed with a text from Tasha. Thanks for last night. It was nice to see you relaxed and happy. Then one from Celine. Hope we didn't cause any problems at home. Worth it, though. I didn't respond to either message immediately. Instead, I called my lawyer. Patricia, it's Miles Heron. I think it's time to move forward with the separation papers. What changed? Everything. That evening, Brielle tried a different approach. She was waiting for me in the living room when I got home, dressed casually but strategically, her phone nowhere in sight. We need to talk, she said. Okay. I know you're upset. I'm not upset, Brielle. I'm done. Done with what? With this. With pretending we have a marriage when what we actually have is a business arrangement where you get to do whatever you want and I get to pay for it. She flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? When's the last time you asked about my day and actually listened to the answer? When's the last time you touched me without wanting something? When's the last time you chose my company over your phone? I choose your company every day. I live here, don't I? You live in the house I bought, yes. But you don't live with me. You live around me. So what? You're going to leave me for my friends. Is that what this is about? I almost laughed. This isn't about your friends, Brielle. This is about the fact that your friends pay more attention to me in one evening than you have in 6 months. They were flirting with you to make me jealous. Were they? Because it seemed like they were flirting with me because they wanted to. That shut her up. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. I'm filing for separation. You can stay in the house until we work out the details, but I want you to start looking for your own place. You can't kick me out. This is my home, too. Actually, I can. My name's on the deed. My money pays the mortgage. My credit secured the loan. What about Ava? What about her? She'll have 2 parents who live separately, instead of 2 parents who hate each other under the same roof. Brielle started crying then. Real tears, not the performed emotion she used for her content. Miles, please. I know I've made mistakes, but we can fix this. I'll change. I'll be better. You'll be better until you get bored again. Then you'll find new ways to humiliate me while I pay for the privilege. I never meant to humiliate you. Yes, you did. That was the point. Making me feel small made you feel big. I walked toward the stairs, then stopped. For what it's worth, I hope you find what you're looking for. I just don't want to fund the search anymore. Word travels fast in a small town, especially when that word involves social media personalities and marital drama. Within a week of my conversation with Brielle, the entire social circle knew something was happening. Tasha texted me first. Heard you and B are having problems. Want to talk about it over coffee? Then Celine. If you need a friend right now, I'm here. No judgment, just support. I agreed to meet them, but this time I suggested the corner pocket. I wanted home field advantage, and I wanted Coach D's perspective on whatever was about to happen. They arrived together, dressed more casually than usual, but still carefully put together. Coach D raised an eyebrow when I introduced them, but kept his opinions to himself. So, Tasha said once we'd claimed a corner booth, how are you holding up? Better than expected, actually. Brielle's been posting cryptic stuff about fighting for love and not giving up on family. Celine reported. Very dramatic. Sounds about right. The thing is, Tasha leaned forward, we want you to know that whatever happens between you and her, it doesn't have to affect our friendship. What friendship is that? Celine laughed. Come on, Miles. We've been flirting with you for months. You're not that oblivious. I noticed. I'm just wondering why. Because you're attractive, intelligent, and completely wasted on someone who doesn't appreciate you, Tasha said bluntly. And because we've been watching Brielle treat you like garbage while she runs around with other men, Celine added. Someone should show you what you're worth. It was flattering, but it was also suspicious. These women had been Brielle's friends for years. Their sudden loyalty to me felt convenient. What does Brielle think about your newfound interest in my well-being? She doesn't know, Tasha said quickly. We're not telling her about these conversations, Celine confirmed. How thoughtful of you. Over the next hour, they made their intentions crystal clear. They were available, interested, and ready to help me move on from my marriage. All I had to do was say yes. But something Coach D had said earlier kept echoing in my head. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. These women had watched Brielle disrespect me for months without saying a word. They'd participated in conversations where she mocked me, diminished me, and planned her affairs. Now they wanted to comfort me. I appreciate the offer, I said finally, but I think I need to focus on my daughter and my divorce right now. Of course, Tasha said, but I could see disappointment in her eyes. But when you're ready for some fun, I'll let you know. After they left, Coach D joined me at the booth. Those two are trouble, he said without preamble. Yeah, I'm starting to figure that out. They're not interested in you, son. They're interested in what you represent. Which is? Revenge against their friend, and a way to feel powerful. You got all that from one conversation? I got that from 40 years of watching people. Those women don't want to build you up. They want to use you to tear her down. He was right, but I was already 3 steps ahead of him. I met with Patricia Wells again the following Monday. The separation papers were ready, and she'd prepared a comprehensive settlement proposal that would leave Brielle with enough to start over, but not enough to maintain her current lifestyle. She'll probably contest this, Patricia warned. Let her. I have documentation of her adultery, her financial irresponsibility, and her neglect of our daughter. Speaking of your daughter, how are you planning to handle custody? I want primary custody with supervised visitation for Brielle until she can prove she's stable. That's aggressive. She's been leaving Ava with babysitters while she goes on work trips with her boyfriends. I have the receipts. Patricia nodded approvingly. You've been thorough. I told you, I'm good at documentation. That evening, I served Brielle the papers myself. She was in the living room, editing content on her laptop, when I placed the folder on the coffee table in front of her. What's this? Separation agreement. You should read it. She opened the folder and scanned the first page, her expression shifting from confusion to shock to anger. You're really doing this? I'm really doing this. What about Ava? What about her? She'll be better off with parents who aren't lying to each other every day. I never lied to you. I pulled out my phone and showed her screenshots of her messages with Ryder, Marcus, and David. Really? Never? She stared at the evidence of her affairs, and I watched her realize that I'd known for months. How long have you been planning this? Since I stopped believing your excuses. And your new girlfriends? Are they part of the plan too? Tasha and Celine aren't my girlfriends. They're opportunists who saw a chance to hurt you and took it. So you used them? I let them use themselves. There's a difference. She closed the folder and looked at me with something that might have been respect. I underestimated you. Most people do. It's my greatest advantage. What happens now? Now you sign the papers, find a place to live, and we figure out how to be good parents separately. And if I don't sign? Then we go to court, and I present evidence of your affairs to a judge. Your choice." She was quiet for a long time, processing the reality of her situation. "I never meant for it to go this far," she said finally. "Yes, you did. You just thought I'd never call your bluff. I thought you loved me too much to leave. I did love you too much to leave. Past tense." Brielle signed the papers 3 days later, but she couldn't resist one final performance. She posted a long, emotional video about fighting for your family and not giving up on love that painted me as the villain who'd abandoned his wife and child. The response was immediate and predictable. Her followers flooded the comments with support, calling me everything from heartless to abusive. My phone buzzed with messages from acquaintances who'd seen the video and wanted to know my side of the story. I didn't respond to any of it. Instead, I did something Brielle never expected. I stayed silent and let her dig her own grave. Because while she was performing her heartbreak for the internet, Tasha and Celine were getting nervous about their own roles in the drama. They'd been counting on my discretion, but they'd also been preparing for the possibility that I might expose their behavior. What they did next proved Coach D's assessment of their character. They went to Brielle and confessed everything: our coffee meetings, our text conversations, their attempts to seduce me. But they framed it as concern for her marriage. "We were trying to figure out what was wrong with Miles," Tasha explained in a group chat I wasn't supposed to see but had access to through Brielle's laptop. "We thought if we could understand why he was pulling away, we could help you fix things. We never meant for it to go as far as it did," Celine added. "But he was so angry about your work situation, and we thought maybe if he felt heard." It was masterful manipulation. They'd positioned themselves as loyal friends who'd sacrificed their own comfort to save Brielle's marriage. And Brielle, desperate for allies, bought it completely. Which is when I played my final card. I created a group chat with all 3 women and sent them a single message. "Tomorrow, 7 p.m., the corner pocket. We need to talk." Then I waited. They arrived together, presenting a united front that fooled no one. The corner pocket was busy enough to provide witnesses, but not so crowded that our conversation would be drowned out. I'd chosen a table in the center of the room, under the lights, where everything would be visible and audible. Coach D was behind the bar, close enough to intervene if things got heated. "Miles," Brielle began, "I think we can work this out." "Sit down," I interrupted. "All of you." They sat, and I placed a folder on the table between us. "What's that?" Tasha asked. "Evidence." I opened the folder and spread out printed screenshots of their group chat conversations, their individual messages to me, and their discussions about using me to hurt Brielle. This is every text message, every email, and every social media interaction between all of us over the past 2 months. Brielle picked up one of the screenshots, a conversation between Tasha and Celine about how easy I was to manipulate. "You said you were trying to help me," she said to her friends. "We were," Celine protested. "By calling me a snake who didn't deserve my husband?" Tasha reached for the papers. "You're taking that out of context, am I?" I pulled out another screenshot. "Because here's you telling Celine that you'd always wondered what Miles was like in bed and that you were tired of watching Brielle waste him." The color drained from Tasha's face. "And here's Celine telling you that I was definitely interested and that she was going to make a move soon." Celine started to speak, but I held up my hand. "I'm not finished. Here's my personal favorite, the conversation where you both agreed that I was pathetic enough to fall for the attention and that you could use me to destroy Brielle's perfect life." The silence that followed was deafening. Other patrons had started to notice our table, drawn by the tension and raised voices. "You played all of us," Brielle said finally. "No, I documented all of you. There's a difference." "What do you want?" Tasha asked. "I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You tried to manipulate a man going through a divorce, betray your friend, and destroy a family for your own entertainment. That's not what happened, Celine protested. Isn't it? Because I have evidence of exactly what happened. Every lie, every manipulation, every calculated move. I stood up and gathered the papers. Brielle, you'll have your belongings out of my house by the end of the week. The custody arrangement is non-negotiable. And us? Tasha asked. You get to live with the fact that everyone in this room now knows exactly who you are. I turned to address the other patrons, who were openly listening now. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Tasha Morrison and Celine Rodriguez. They make a hobby of destroying marriages for fun. Brielle Torin here is their latest victim, and their former best friend. The humiliation on their faces was complete and public. In a town like Crimson Lake, reputation was everything, and theirs were now permanently damaged. I walked out of the corner pocket and drove home to my daughter, who was waiting with the babysitter, completely unaware that her parents' marriage had just ended in spectacular fashion. 6 months later, my life looked completely different. Brielle had moved to the next town over, where she was rebuilding her social media presence and dating a personal trainer named Jake, who was young enough to think her drama was exciting. She saw Ava every other weekend and had managed to maintain some semblance of the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to. Tasha and Celine had both left Crimson Lake. The social media industry is small, and word of their behavior had spread quickly through their professional networks. Last I heard, Tasha was working retail in another state, and Celine had moved back in with her parents. I'd kept the house, gained primary custody of Ava, and discovered that single fatherhood suited me better than married neglect. My daughter and I had developed routines that didn't revolve around anyone's need for constant validation. "Daddy, are you happier now?" Ava asked one evening as I tucked her into bed. "Why do you ask?" "Because you smile more, and you don't look sad when Mommy calls. Kids see everything, don't they?" "Yes, sweetheart. I'm happier now." "Good. I like it when you're happy." The divorce had been finalized without drama. Brielle had ultimately decided that public litigation would hurt her brand more than a quiet settlement. She kept her car, her equipment, and enough money to start over. I kept everything else. My lawyer had been impressed by the efficiency of the process. "Most divorces this contentious drag on for years," Patricia told me at our final meeting. "Most people don't have as much documentation as I do. Most people don't plan as carefully as you did." She was right. I'd approached my divorce the same way I approached everything else, methodically, thoroughly, and with attention to detail. But the real victory wasn't the settlement or the custody arrangement. It was the fact that I'd reclaimed my self-respect. For months, I'd allowed myself to be diminished by people who saw kindness as weakness and loyalty as stupidity. I'd let Brielle's need for drama define our relationship, and I'd let her friends' manipulation affect my judgment. The moment I stopped playing their games and started playing my own, everything changed. Coach D had been right about smart anger versus stupid anger. Stupid anger would have led to confrontations, scenes, and public humiliation that would have hurt my daughter and my reputation. Smart anger led to documentation, strategy, and consequences that fit the crimes. I still went to the corner pocket regularly, but now it was for relaxation instead of therapy. I'd started dating occasionally, women who were impressed by stability instead of threatened by it. "You seem different," my date Sarah had observed a few weeks earlier, "more confident." I learned some things about myself recently. Good things? Necessary things. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I hope you're happy. You destroyed 3 lives for your ego." I recognized Tasha's writing style, even from a burner phone. I deleted the message without responding. Some people never learn that actions have consequences. They just learn to blame other people for the results of their choices. Ava ran into the kitchen, wearing her soccer uniform and carrying her gear bag. "Ready for practice, Dad?" "Ready." As we drove to the soccer field, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked like a man who'd been through a war and come out stronger, because that's exactly what I was. The game was over, I'd won, and the prize was getting my life back.